Welcome to Emboldened with Jessica, the podcast where we have thoughtful conversations about mental health, relationships, culture, and the ways we build lives that feel more connected, intentional, and fully our own. I'm Jessica Jackson, your host. I'm a licensed therapist and a somatic experiencing practitioner. In each episode, we explore the ideas, questions, and stories that invite us to think a little differently and hopefully leave feeling a little more connected to ourselves and one another. Of course, I never do this alone. Joining me is our producer and co-host, Ariele.
Hi, everybody.
And we're also joined by our creative strategist and cultural chatterist, Kathleen.
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hey.
Welcome to Emboldened with Jessica. There might be some sadness that emerges as you're listening to this episode today. And so just a reminder to take what you need, to take breaks if you need to during the episode, and to allow yourself to do something that feels fun. We want you to enjoy living and to be where your feet are, to be with the beautiful people that you have in your life, the beautiful things that you have in your worlds, whether that's plants, whether that's animals or your neighborhood, just to really be fully there. That would be the invitation for this week. One of the things when we talk about death and grieving and that process of navigating grief, I think there are a lot of myths that we're told by society. Sometimes we're told them by family members, and we feel like there's a certain way that's a correct way to grieve. Sometimes we're told that it has to be in a certain time frame and then we should be over it. Or even if we don't go through grieving that entire time period, then that's not enough. We must not be sad. What are some other myths that you feel like are important for us to dismantle in terms of how a person is supposed to navigate grief?
One of the main ones that comes up that I see a lot is that I feel like people think that there's like a way to grieve, that there's a set way to do it. There must be some grieving manual out there that people are supposed to fall into, and that just doesn't exist.
Oh, for sure.
I was just going to say it's not linear. So just thinking there's a period where you're supposed to feel really sad, and then all of a sudden it gets easier. Each day gets easier and easier.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's a big one.
Not really the case.
Yeah. And also sometimes we'll see how certain people are showing up in their grieving. So maybe that's at the funeral, they're maybe very involved. Maybe they're someone who can really plan out all of the details. And for us, maybe it looks really hard for us to think about any of those details. And so we might think we're doing it wrong because we're not as able to focus on some of the things in the ways that maybe our siblings or someone else navigating the grief is holding it. And so everyone just has their own way. It really does vary. For some people to function for themselves is hard enough, let alone thinking about what kind of plans our mother would have wanted or what kind of plans our sibling wanted for their funeral. It's hard to wrap our minds around that. And so feeling compelled to operate in the ways that you would operate when you're not grieving is certainly one of the myths. The other piece I think is ridiculous is that a lot of times when we work for corporations, we're given timelines of how many days we can take depending on how close we were to that family member, and closeness measured by what their relation was to us. So for a grandmother, we get so many days. For a parent, we get so many days, etc. And that's just so ridiculous because, as we know, everyone has different types of relationships with different people. Sometimes you want to return to work so that you're thinking about something other than the loss. And other times you really cannot. You can't think about it. And so I think that's another really messed up system that people are often navigating when they're thinking about grief. And if you were someone who was navigating anticipatory grief, let's say there was a loved one you were caring for, maybe a lot of your time off was already used up in being at the hospital and taking the person to appointments and and sitting with the fullness of whatever the diagnosis was, or noticing that loved one's capacity and abilities change. And so sometimes it's you've already kind of don't have very much time off. And sometimes, depending on your workplace, you might have some colleagues and some supervisors who are very supportive and empathetic. And sometimes we don't get to experience that. I think one of the other myths of navigating grief is that sometimes when a person is experiencing grief, they assume that someone else who has experienced grief will be the person to guide them through it, or has all of the steps, or has the cheat codes. That's it. Yes. And so, yes, not assuming that a person who's navigated a lot of grief has all of that, because sometimes it activates their grief. Now that we've tackled some of the myths, certainly these are not all of the myths, but just some, I want to talk about things that are supportive when we are navigating grief. So one of the first things is to dispel things that are not useful, in terms of that there's a certain way you have to operate. The other thing is, if we were to look at some of the cultural differences around how people navigate grief and dying, there's some really beautiful lessons to be learned in the ways that different folks navigate it. So in a lot of African traditions, we have ancestor remembrance, which can look like altars, it can look like music or shared meals, a lot of oral storytelling, so sharing stories about that loved one, sharing stories about the family, and then continuing the wisdom across generations. So again, that storytelling, letting people know about who your great-grandfather was, or who this great aunt was, and even like their quirkiness, right? Being able to share that with other people. So in a lot of Japanese traditions, there is also a maintaining of family altars, offering of food, and that continued conversation around ancestors. And some Latin traditions like Guatemala, El Salvador, Bolivia, Mexico, there's the use of the ofrenda, typically in the month of October, and that might include some photographs, favorite foods, candles, flowers, and meaningful objects and written letters as a way to remember and honor, and to also invite that loved one into the home. And so what many of our ancestral traditions have been teaching us for generations to do as a way to honor ones that have passed, and a way to offer some support, caring, and warmth to those that are navigating the grief. Neuroscience has done some research and concluded that indeed those things are helpful. So considering in terms of the neuroscience way of navigating grief, we're looking at storytelling, which we've talked about, having ongoing relationships with our peers, our friends, our family. So really talking to people, asking them to share about a loved one that's passed if they want to, right? Letting them know, hey, I'd like to know more about your uncle that passed. Are there any stories you want to share? And maybe they are not up to sharing them now, but we might offer to them, I understand this maybe is a difficult time to talk about them, or maybe you're not quite ready to share, but if at any point you want to share some stories, I would love to hear them.
I really love this aspect of asking questions or asking for stories about loved ones. What are some ways people can support someone who is grieving? Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of times people will say, what can I do to help? But that kind of puts the onus on the person who's grieving to think about what that person can do. What are some ways people can show up without giving that person the burden of having to come up with how they can help them?
That's a really beautiful question. It's one of the main things that come up. There are a few things that are really helpful. We want to give specific offers to people. So to offer, hey, can I bring over dinner? Or would it be okay if I attend the funeral? Or would you be up for a walk this week? And then to really remember these important death anniversaries, or maybe it is an actual anniversary the person had, or a birthday. So putting that on your calendar, or remembering it and checking in with them before that day, and just saying, hey, I know that the anniversary of this person passing, of your sister passing, is coming up. Do you want to spend time together that day? Before, would you like to spend time? Though that kind of intentionally checking in, I know for me, navigating loss, that means a world. And also, it honors the fact that it's not just over after the first 3 months or after the year. You're good. You're not necessarily good at all, and those anniversaries can be really tender times. The other thing is, a lot of times we'll have the belief that there's a right or perfect thing to say. And so that puts a lot of pressure on it. We'll see that, oh, someone just posted that someone's significant passed, their dog passed, and I know they were very close to their dog. But, ooh, I don't have anything to say, so I'm just not going to say anything. There's no perfect thing to say, but to acknowledge it, to say, you know what, my heart is really going out to you right now. And, condolences. I'm so sorry that you're navigating this grief, things like that. Those are all beautiful, warm acknowledgments, right? And then the other thing is, a lot of times when someone is navigating grief, this is really like typical. People will avoid it, or they'll believe that if they bring it up to you, that's going to somehow further upset this person, or it's going to make them remember they're grieving and right now they're smiling, they're not thinking about it. The reality is, when someone is navigating grief, they're thinking about it almost all of the time. They're thinking about it a lot. You bringing it up is not now putting it on their mind or on their radar. They're already thinking about it. They just were thinking they couldn't talk about it with you, or with anyone else, or that people are going to think that they should get over it, or they shouldn't be crying about this anymore. And so to offer up, to bring it up, to make something be more mentionable is really supportive for you, right? As the friend, because now we're not just like kind of clenching our bodies and holding and being really worried about the friend with no actionable step, but it's also really helpful for the person that's grieving, that this isn't something they have to do alone or always vocalize and bring up the topic, because sometimes you really want to talk about the memories, the stories that you have, and you're waiting for an opening.
Yeah, I love that. I love all of those tips. And it's just so helpful to just have that as a reminder, because we're all going to experience some form of grief in our lifetime, and we will have loved ones who are experiencing grief. And so just knowing the ways to show up and support them is extremely helpful, just to be prepared.
The other thing that person navigating grief might be experiencing, and whether you're supporting the friend or you're the person that is navigating the grief, is having an ongoing relationship with the person that's passed. And so that might look like talking with them. That might look like doing certain things that they really enjoyed doing, or making a meal or a dish that they really enjoyed, or going a place that they really enjoyed going. Allowing yourself to kind of invite that presence of that loved one is very important. And I think a lot of times sometimes society will kind of be like, what are you talking about? You're still talking to them. They're not here anymore. Or why are you visiting these spaces that they used to be in? Everything doesn't need to be understood by other people. But if you're finding that it is supportive to you and it feels soothing and comforting, it's something to be open to. And that's one of the things that Lilli talks a little bit about during her interview. The other piece that can be very somatically supportive when you're navigating grief is dancing and movement. And so the dancing doesn't have to be joyful dancing. Sometimes it's a heaviness. Sometimes it's a little bit more intense, a rocking. It's whatever the body kind of feels like doing that is rhythmic and repetitive, because those are things that are really supportive and really healing for yourself. That could also include walking, which is rhythmic and repetitive, gentle stretching, crying, right? It releases a lot of feel good body. I want to say chemicals, but that's not the word I want to say. But crying is extremely supportive, and so can meditation and breathing. So when I talked about being able to talk with the loved one who has passed, sometimes meditation can be a way to listen in, because I do feel like there can be communication there if you want there to be. In times of meditation, it may be a way to feel closeness or to hear a message that that person wants you to have. So it's just another way to kind of consider navigating grief.
Something that I do also think is interesting, I'm all about, I guess, in this conversation is just preparation and how you can prepare to be there for loved ones who are experiencing grief. But what are some ways that people can get ahead of grief for themselves or prepare for family?
Think about when you have unexpectedly lost somebody and things that
Mm-hmm.
weren't in order. What can you get in order? Because there is going to be more loss, there is going to be more death. So, what can we learn from
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't do before? So, whether it is making
Mm-hmm.
sure financials are in order, the will, like a trust.
Yeah, that's true.
But also
Yeah.
too, with it being so much into the 21st century, we got to think about our social media. We have like
Yes.
a living digital footprint right now. How do you want
Yeah.
that to be handled when you die?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is so important. All of these things are considerations that I know a lot of folks don't want to think about, but I think it's a loving and compassionate way to care for our loved ones. They're already going to be navigating our loss. And is there something that we can do now to make things a little bit smoother and easier for them? So I often joke that my siblings are going to be devastated. Okay, I'm not even joking. They're going to be devastated. And so I have personally tried to make that a little bit easier by I created a document that has where the important things in my household can be found. It's a digital document that they have access to, and one sibling did not want to have access to that. And so, okay, their decision. But another sibling has access to it. And it also includes like where all my money is, where my retirement plans are. And so, thinking about legally, what are some steps that you can take to set up a trust or to actually make sure the money that you worked really hard to obtain goes to your family and doesn't go to the state. I think those are important, beautiful ways that we can prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Have you all thought about what you want done? Because I want a party. Okay. The time for crying, of course, people can cry. They can cry at the party. They can cry before and after. And I do want it to be fun. I would like for my loved ones to be together so they're not navigating things alone. I want them to think about some really fun memories with me. I want there to be a way to kind of release some of the energy. So yeah, I also want to put money aside so there can be fun. A party, honey. You know I love a party. And a theme, yes. Have you all thought about what it is you might want to do to honor yourself when you're no longer here? What kind of legacy or funeral that you want to have?
I don't want anything. I want to fade to black.
Ariel, I wasn't ready. My breath just took.
Maybe like 15 years ago, I may have wanted something different, but yeah, I just want to fade to black. I think I even told my mom, like, if I died before my mom, I'm like, just cremate and yeah.
Ariel, would you be okay with people doing their own thing to remember
I mean,
and celebrate?
people are going to do what they're going to do,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they'll be lucky if they even know that I died. So
Oh
we'll
my
see.
gosh, Ariel.
That is a very Ariel.
Whoa. And you got to respect people's wishes. So when they've shared their wishes, that's a really hard thing because, you do want to honor and respect it. Because Ariel, I feel like you would haunt us if we didn't respect the wishes.
No, I would not.
Oh, you wouldn't?
That's why I say everybody can do what they want to do, but
Okay.
I don't want anything.
Well, Kathleen, have you thought about this?
I haven't really. I guess. I mean, I'm the type of person, I don't really love to be the center of attention to begin with.
Says the
So
person who had two weddings.
exactly. So, I mean, and that wasn't, I mean, that will
I
be
know you did
another
not want to
episode.
have two
I did
weddings.
not want to have that. So
I know
that's
you
another
didn't.
episode of the pod we can discuss.
That's
But
true. There's
so
lore
yeah, it's kind
there.
of hard to think about. I guess I would leave it to the loved ones who are wanting to celebrate in the way that is feels good for them. But
Hmm.
personally, I'm not someone that likes a big fuss made over me, so I feel like that's how
Hmm.
I would continue to feel.
This has been a heavy episode. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about really intimate, serious things. And as I'm listening to Ariel and Kathleen share like what they would want, like I'm noticing my heart race a little bit, right? I'm noticing, ooh, that kind of like that feeling of loss. There might be some sadness that emerges as you're listening to this episode today. And so just a reminder to take what you need, to take breaks if you need to during the episode, and to allow yourself to do something that feels fun. We want you to enjoy living and to be where your feet are. So to really to be with the beautiful people that you have in your life, the beautiful things that you have in your worlds, whether that's plants, whether that's animals, whether that is a purpose or your neighborhood, just to really to be fully there. That would be the invitation for this week, just to give yourself even 5 minutes to just kind of settle into the soles of your feet and to just kind of take in the beauty and the abundance that is around you. So while we talk about death, a big part of the grieving and death process for most ancestral communities and cultures is to really be fully where you're at, right? To really breathe some life into your day. And so that's also an invitation for this episode.
Now we are going to introduce Lilli Lopez. She is a stand-up comedian, producer, and writer. Lilli has been performing comedy for more than 10 years and has opened up for notable headliners, including Sofia Niño de Rivera, Marcelo Arguello, and Arpana Nancherla. She appeared as the taco game show host on United Tacos of America and has performed in comedy festivals, including the Latina Comedy Festival, LA Diversity and Comedy Festival by Second City, and Out of Bounds Comedy Festival.
Lilli, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lilli, I had the pleasure of meeting you through Kathleen. Kathleen, will you tell us about how you and Lilli met?
Yes. Okay. So Lilli and I met in 2012. We both went to grad school together at Louisiana State University. And we connected ahead of time on social media, on Facebook. We were a part of a grad school group. And Lilli put in the chat, "Hey, I'm looking at apartments. Does anyone have a place that they're moving into? I'm going down this weekend with my mom to look for places." And Lilli saved my life. Okay.
Hello. Yes, you really did. You really did.
Because I had already put a deposit down for the most awful place.
It was scary. It was scary.
It was scary. And it was literally in this area where mostly undergraduate students lived, but also the building was horrible. And I put down that $500 deposit that I didn't get back, but it was worth it because Lilli had found an incredible little apartment tucked away. And even the property manager that we had, Wayne, was just like, I don't know how you found this place. God must have really been looking out for you. And I was like, well, it was Lilli. So we ended up being neighbors and had our 2-year grad programs experience together. And I just wouldn't have been able to do that experience without Lilli right there.
I'm smiling over here from ear to ear, just beaming because I love our little story and I love that we became neighbors. I think that was the first time I'd moved away from home, grad school.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
I didn't know, how it was going to be living on my own. I went to undergrad in my hometown, so I just commuted from, my lifelong home to school. So this was my first time leaving home and having Kathleen as my neighbor, and my grad school bestie was just everything I needed. And I love that Wayne said that to you, because it kind of, I do feel like, even though we haven't lived in the same city since those first 2 years of our friendship, you mean so much to me, Kathleen. And
I feel the same.
I feel like, yeah, God was very much present in this connection. And I'm so excited. And I love you too, Jessica. And I think, like, that's just the thing. I think you just find people who you align with. And I think this is, our friendship is such a blessing to me because, after all this time, we've just thinking back to 2012 to now, so much has happened. And you've very much been
Mhm.
of my journey and all these things, even through grief. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm definitely going to be experiencing emotions on this end of the call, but I feel safe and excited to share with you all.
Thank you for soft launching our topic. So today we're going to be talking more about grief. And Ariel brought this up because we are in a season where we are a lot of our loved ones are experiencing grief. We've had some close friends, we've had some parents that we both have lost. And so it just felt like a topic that how can we not shed a little bit of somatic support around? How can we not talk about something that is present in a lot of our lives? And so today, we wanted to hold some space for grief and talk through some supports. And a lot of times with grief, it feels like it's not mentionable. We're not quite sure what to say to people who are navigating grief. We're not quite sure that we can reach out when we're grieving because the feeling is I'm in not a good place and no one's going to want to interact with me. People aren't going to want to talk about this. And so it is such an uncomfortable topic at times that we wanted to do it some honor. We wanted to do it some support by us making it mentionable and something that we can dive into. So that was a big Mr. Rogers thing, is that when something is really hard, when we don't give it language, when it's not mentionable, it becomes larger and more scary. And when we can give something language, grieving, the grieving process, and we'll be talking about the different types of grieving. But really, we want to learn from Lilli a little bit about Lilli's experience with grief and things that have supported you along the ways. And also, how do we hold space for joy? Because sometimes we feel like grief has to just be the thing. We're wearing all black. We're not listening to music. We don't get to experience any type of joy if we're going to really honor the person that we're grieving. And that is a myth. So I wanted us to dismantle that with Lilli. So Lilli, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, well, first off, I do have a full-time gig. I've been in nonprofit communications for over a decade, just a couple years longer than I've been a comedian. So I also am a stand-up comedian. I started off performing, doing improv in 2015, and I mention improv because it really did just completely change the way I communicate and see the world. And it's something I found after I was living life checking boxes that I didn't really need to check, that I thought I, wanted, maybe trying to make my parents proud and stuff. So by the time we finished grad school, I was like, I'm going to do this comedy thing. And I fell in love with it. And I've just been doing it ever since. So I definitely feel like my grief journey has so much humor in the healing, and being a comedian and a storyteller is a huge part of my life, and it's a huge part of that process too.
Lilli, you do comedy, you've done improv, and I've always just said that you are the type of person where you are such a light, and people are drawn to that and want to be around you. Do you feel that it's difficult when you are experiencing grief or just not having the best day, that people are expecting you to show up in a certain type of way? Or do you feel pressure in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. And I think too, I don't feel it with people who know me and are close to me, and but I have definitely experienced that, maybe anxiety if I'm meeting someone new, and I can see that well, first of all, thank you for saying I'm a light. But I definitely have gotten that, and I've gotten that a lot of my life. Lilli being funny has been a part of me and how people see me since I was a kid, which, I mean, it's also just a part of me because of, the household I grew up in. My dad was super funny, and we'll definitely talk about him soon enough. But I noticed, especially since experiencing bigger loss in the last 2 to 3 years, when meeting new people, I can see that they have expectations of me, and I almost feel like it's a matter of time before I either disappoint them, or I can see that they've really seen me. I can see when people really see me, or they're just like, ooh, what's that? Shiny, and that's where, yeah, I definitely have found that a bit difficult. But as I've gotten older and just, I've also been in therapy. I started therapy in maybe 2015, 2016, I think, and have built up my own perception of self while trying not to allow other people's perception of me influence that. So as much as someone might like me or fawn over me, I can't take that seriously. Just as much as I can't take it seriously when someone clearly doesn't like me, they clearly don't know me. I'm like, you kind of just gotta get to know me more before we're really dancing together.
Oh, that's right. That is a really good question, because when I think of you, Lilli, I do think of someone who is just fun in the moment. I also, though, because of the way you met Kathleen, and then I don't know if of course you remember, but shortly after you all got to campus, there was that hurricane. Yes. And I just felt so much better that Kathleen had you to navigate that with, because I think you all went and got boots, rain boots. And I think you put a mattress against the door. You all were taking the precautions, but I knew she wasn't alone. And I don't even think I had met you yet, but what I had heard about you and the ways that Kathleen had talked about you, I was like, this is a person who, they're in this together and they're going to get through it together. And so I could see how, I think this also sometimes happens with women of color, where people expect us to be the fun, the good time, to bring the party. Now that you're here, the party can officially start. And so this expectation to bring a certain kind of energy, especially if you're a person who is funny, you're hilarious. And so I love that question. I appreciate you asking that, because it also gets at a bigger picture of who you are and how people expect you to be, and ways that you have decided to combat that. Even when you shared about taking a traditional path because you wanted to, make your folks proud. I think a lot of times we know our parents have sacrificed for us. And so sometimes, whether it's implied or explicitly stated, there is sometimes a feeling or obligation to go in a certain traditional kind of pathway for success. And sometimes it makes it hard to go into things that are a little bit more creative.
Absolutely. That has absolutely been on my mind lately. And my dad passed away October 23, 24. What year was it?
Mm,
It
23.
was 23.
Right. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was October
mm,
23. And it feels like a blur still almost, but he passed very suddenly. He wasn't sick really, and he had a heart attack and he died. So that grief process was also, it felt like, I don't know, time wasn't really real at the time, but all this to get to something that stood out to me a lot in, I guess, the funeral and his rosary and all of this meeting, seeing people you hadn't seen in years and them sharing
mm-hmm,
condolences with myself, my sister, and my mom. A couple of people said to me, like, it's kind of on me now to be
mm,
the life of the party, the funny one. And like everyone knows that I was just like my dad. He was very humorous, and I came out the womb cracking jokes too. Like I got my personality, so much of those traits that people love, from my dad. I knew my dad on a personal level. He was very funny on a day-to-day basis, but he also was very calm sometimes, or he needed time outside to like ground and be alone. And people don't see that when they just see, oh, she's on stage, she's so funny, she's so, she's always cracking jokes and this and that. But I'm someone who needs time to regroup or to put
mm-hmm.
jokes down and like feel my feelings. So yeah, that's something I definitely have been pondering on in the last I guess this year, but truly in connection with people, new people, how people come in and out of your life, and in connection with friends who I've known for a long time and friends who I am getting to know now. I'm just kind of, yeah, observing how I'm received, I think.
I know we talked about this some, Lilli, but what has genuinely comforted you during this period of grief, or during different periods of grief?
That is a really good question. I can't say that it's anything physical or anything like external, but I think it's a lot of things, but it really kind of just comes down to knowing that my dad and the other people and pets I've lost, like, are still around. The energy of their existence and time on earth has just transformed in a different way, and I can see it through me living my life. I'm definitely someone who's talking to dead people all the time. Knowing and seeing how my passed on loved ones, what I refer to now as my angels and my ancestors, seeing how they
Mm-hmm.
in my daily life to remind me that I'm not alone, that I am still very much loved by them and by the universe and this natural world we get to be a part of. That comforts me a lot. And I think that's something too that I'm so grateful for. That I'm so grateful for the many years of therapy. I'm so grateful for my own exploration of my relationship with the divine and with God and all of that. So I consider myself a pretty spiritual person. I pray a lot. I try to meditate. I try to ground.
You're speaking to the reality that I think is hard for some people to acknowledge. You said, I talk to dead people, okay? And it is a wonderful resource to know that those conversations with your loved one does not have to end because they're not physically in this world, that there's all of these different ways that people might communicate with someone who's passed. It might look like maybe they liked a particular flower or a particular song. And it might be in really hard moments where we happen to see that flower, or we're like, can you send me a sign? Are you still there? Are we still connected? And we'll get these random signs of that, and those can feel really comforting.
Absolutely. And for my connection with my dad, we really connected through music when he was here. And one Christmas, my gift to him was a little portable Bluetooth speaker and Spotify, because
Oh, wow.
I always knew how much he loved music, and that was something that we connected through. And so, almost as soon as he passed, he was coming to me through the radio. And even recently, I don't know if I shared this with you, Kathleen, but I went to go eat pho. That's my love, to go have a bowl of pho by myself. Very
We used to call it clarity.
Yeah, yes, a bowl of clarity. Oh my gosh. So one day I was on my way to eat pho at this little restaurant down from a friend of mine, his favorite bar. And I saw him sitting out alone on the patio. And this is another comedian friend who was one of the first comics I befriended in Dallas when I moved here. So I see him at the bar and I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. I'll go eat my bowl of pho and I'll swing back, say hi, whatever. Think nothing of it. I go to the restaurant, and usually this restaurant is playing, like, for whatever reason, 90s hits or like 2000s, kind of just like pop or, hit music. And today they were playing country music. And so I thought, oh, interesting. And immediately at this point, I'm like, am I having dinner with or lunch with company? I thought of my dad. The song was Willie Nelson, You Were Always on My Mind. Kind of under my breath, I'm like, hey, Dad. And then I get my bowl of pho and I'm there eating. And another song comes on, a song that I've never heard play out in the wild, just like this. It's a song called Highwayman by the Highwaymen. And these are 4 country music stars. It's Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson. And each one of them has a point in the song. They have their own part of the song where they say, basically each verse is telling the story of a man who lived here on earth. The first one says, I was a highwayman, and on the something whatever, I'm totally butchering it, but he basically says, I was here, then this happened to me, and then I was gone, but I'm still here. So there's a part, I can't listen to this song without getting choked up or full blown crying, but it's always a nice release. So this one, the final verse, the final singer here says, it's Johnny Cash. He says, first the first person, it was a highwayman, then it's a sailor, and then it's a dam builder and he gets crushed or something. And then the final person is like another incarnation of a human on earth. He says, I fly a starship across the universe divide, and when I reach the other side, I'll find a place to rest my spirit if I can. Perhaps I may become a highwayman again, or I may simply be a single drop of rain, but I will remain, and I'll be back again and again and again and again and again.
Wow.
And that song, I hadn't really ever listened. I had heard it before my dad passed, but it was days after he passed and after his funeral that I was going through his Spotify app on his phone and just taking screenshots of all the songs that he had saved and then saving them to my account, and then listening to them in desperation to connect. That was shortly after he passed, of course. It was really tough. And so anyway, that song comes on and I just pause and I just allow myself to be in the moment. And I thank my dad for visiting me, and then I leave, and then I pass by the bar. My friend isn't there anymore. Well, about 45 minutes later, our other friend calls me and says that this friend had a stroke.
Oh my, wow.
So, and that's how my dad passed. And then I had just had this little experience, visitation, if you want to call it that. And then this happens. Well, anyway, cut to now, my friend is fine and he's rehabilitating.
Oh, good.
in a way we didn't all expect at first. But if my dad comes to me through this music and through these moments of seemingly magic, and I continue to invite that in, because what the grief of losing my father and even my pet, and I've lost a lot of people in my life, but losing your parent is so different. It's like I described it as losing a significant branch on your family tree, and godmother about this last year, and she lost her mom recently, and then she had lost her dad a couple years before that. They were older, it wasn't totally unexpected, but you're just never ready to lose your parent. If you had a good relationship with them or not, the loss of the parent is so significant. And I described that to her. I said it felt like and feels like I lost this huge branch of my tree. And she had lost her mother, and she said she felt like the trunk was gone. And that really resonated with me, because the branch isn't enough. I see why also people who haven't lost a parent get so uncomfortable when you do. People kind of disappear, or they just don't know what to say. And I had a coworker when this happened. It was maybe a couple months after my dad had passed, and I'd been back at work, and everyone had kind of said their condolences and their sorries to me. And then finally she said something, and she's like, "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I just didn't know what to say." And I said, "I completely understand that, because it would scare me too. If you acknowledge someone else's parent dying, it's almost like saying, hey, this can happen to me." It's admitting to yourself that this can and will happen eventually. So I think something about losing my dad, while it was like the deepest grief, well, then a little over a year later, I lost my dog, who saw me through that death.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then pet grief is so much different. The way I reacted to losing my dog was a lot different from losing my dad, but there's still that.
It's grief. Yes.
You have to sit with it. And if you allow yourself to experience the grief, you really give yourself such a beautiful gift back. If you can understand that grief is, well, a lot of people say this, like grief is unexpressed love. It's like where that love goes that you can't give the person. I also feel like grief kind of made me more powerful in a way. Like, well, if I've experienced this and I've come out of it, I really can do so much. I was never I think there was like maybe one moment where I felt so alone in my grief of losing my father. I was going through the stages of grief, and I was really spending time in the anger stage. And I was angry. Couldn't talk to anyone around me. I could, but it was just like, I really just wanted to scream and cry. Like, it was just kind of, I had no words. I just needed like a primal yell. There was one moment where it was like so much, and I just felt like, okay, when is it going to end? And it passed. Actually, I remember I went to see my mom that weekend, and I had kind of been channeling a lot of my anger to her. And sometimes it's, I'm so grateful for my family, because they sometimes expect me to be the person who's making everything fun and funny, and they're the people who are going to love me even when I'm being angry or when I don't know how to react. I remember that weekend, it was so tough, and my mom and I, we met like up in Central Texas, and I had a weekend with her, and it was just good to be with my mother. I'm so grateful that even through me kind of rejecting her in some stages early on in that grief, or being angry with how she was grieving, because I was really showing up for my mom, and then I got angry at her. I was like, hey, I lost my dad. Like, yeah, you lost your husband, but like, I'm over here making you feel better, and no one here is making me feel better, because everyone thinks whatever they think of me. Like, she's good, she's smiling. Like, I don't know,
Ah,
got angry, and then but then I needed her, and I saw her, and it was good. Sometimes, yeah, you just need to connect. You need to.
mhm. You're giving us a masterclass, Lilli, and I don't even know if you're aware of it, but you're sharing a number of things that are really, really healthy in the grieving process. And so one of those things was how you allowed yourself to have that moment when you were with the pho, and um, you were noticing those songs come on, and you were noticing that it was your dad visiting with you. And I think you even used the language of a visitation, and how you allowed yourself to be present for that. You didn't try to run from it or be like, let me get out of this place, or, let me distract myself. You allowed that visitation. And then you thanked him. You said, thank you for visiting me. I do think there's something about when people who are no longer with us, when they give us a visit, sometimes I think they're not sure if we're mad at them, if we're upset with them for leaving, or for something that, maybe happened in the past that we're sitting with. And to allow him to know, you know what, I felt your presence. I know you came, and thank you for being here. I think that is a wonderful, wonderful note that some people don't have. And then you also shared about how there was that person who didn't quite know what to say to you, so they didn't say anything for a while. And I think a lot of times we feel like the language we have is not sufficient, that what someone is going through is so big. What can I possibly say that would be the right thing? And so sometimes we don't say anything, and that to just acknowledge that we know a person is grieving. And sometimes we might even say, I know this language isn't sufficient, not because I want you to tell me it's okay, the language is not sufficient, because now I'm asking the grieving person to do more labor, but just to say, I hear you, I see you, and I'm so sorry. Just that's enough. Just to have that presence with someone is really supportive. And then you also gave us the reality that sometimes when we're holding grief, there's these different roles, these different things that we have to do, whether it's the managing some of the logistics of a funeral and finances, and what do we do with their belongings, and that at different times, a different person who's grieving might have a little bit more capacity than others, but that we all need that space. And so you were really open with your mom. Things don't always have to come out beautifully. They get to just be. And so you said to her, like, I'm also grieving. And sometimes it's really hard for people in the midst of their grief to see that, wow. And she had space to be there for you. So yeah, you've been giving us this beautiful pathway of ways that grief occurs, ways to manage it. So I really appreciate that, Lilli.
You had mentioned too earlier somatic, what in the intro, I don't remember how exactly you put it, maybe somatic release, but that was a huge part of it too. And I think a couple things before we move on. I think just putting yourself in the place of, a community member seeing that this person in my community, whether they're my friend, neighbor, coworker, they've just experienced something that I don't have words for. And maybe in the setting is like odd to bring it up in, but I think too, just giving people who are listening, like if you are in community with people who are experiencing grief, you're never going to have the right words to say. They want to hear that person's not dead. Like, so removing the pressure to be perfect or to say the right thing is so essential, and just showing up for community. And I wonder if that's like an American thing or just being human, that
I think some of it is cultural. Yeah, we don't like talking about death as a
it's
culture in this
it's
country.
weird, it's unprofessional, or it's like, oh, well, I don't really know her like that, so I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm like, well, hey, all I want to talk about right now is my dead dad
Mm,
is dead and died and
mm.
will still be dead tomorrow. So that's, at least that was my experience. I was like, I don't care who I make uncomfortable right now. I'm going to bring up my dead dad.
This is so important. I think a lot of times we feel like if we talk about it or we bring it up or we ask them about how they're navigating the grief, maybe they weren't thinking about it. And so now we're going to make them think about it, or we're going to upset them by bringing it up. The reality is you're already upset. You're already thinking about it. So someone mentioning it doesn't put you in a darker place. What it's doing is it's allowing you to say, "Hey, I see you. I know you're navigating this grief." And even though you're putting it aside for this conversation or in this moment, I know it's there. I'm witnessing it. I'm with you. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. And one of the things that can be really supportive when people are navigating grief is to be able to share stories of their loved one. And those stories don't have to be positive, wonderful memories. They might be, but they might be some of the other things that maybe they're feeling afraid to talk about, or it's challenging to bring it up with family because maybe it was a conflict or a misunderstanding, or, there's all of these different types of stories. And so to be a person that is like, hey, do you want to share? I'm here whenever you want to share. Maybe it's not today. Maybe it's 3 a.m. on a random night when you're sitting with it. Please know that I'm here.
Absolutely. To that point, it's making me think of all the people who showed up for me, or could talk about this, rather, like they were able to talk about this with me. They were people with dead dads,
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
who had experienced that particular loss. That's where I found the most comfort. And it's not like they said anything particularly profound, but like you said, they asked me a little bit about him. And then so I felt inclined to ask a little bit about their dad. And in that moment, our dads are with us because we're remembering
Mm-hmm.
them out loud with each other. And I can also see, now that I know a little more about this person who raised you, or maybe, or just like part of your biological makeup, if you describe them a little, I can see you a little better too.
Oh, for sure.
And I think too, it just comes down to holding grief with someone is so intimate. It really is. And not everyone is ready for that intimacy and that level of vulnerability. And I like how you put it, Jessica. You said something about being in this darkness and then having someone, see you. It made me think of, yeah, like being in a dark cave with your loss, and then someone, you can't see them, but someone showing up and saying, hey, I'm in here with you for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It means the world, and I agree. I think people who have, I agree that I was so right. No, I agree that other people who have experienced a similar loss, we're in a terrible club together in the sense of losing a parent, or for those who have lost a child. It's a terrible club to be in, but there is a sense of, what it is that I'm holding in a different type of way. And I don't have to pretend like everything is so great. I can kind of let it all hang for a bit. And in terms of when you talked about the wanting to yell, sometimes that guttural, being able to fall apart, whether that's in yelling and crying and moving our bodies, we need a level of release. And it's not like it's a one and done. I wish it were. It's not. And so having people that you can be really raw and vulnerable with, and it doesn't have to be all put together. It's part of that healing process. It's part of the grieving process.
I love that you said that. And I also want to add that sometimes you don't have people that you can be that raw with. Or maybe those people live hours away from you, or, I think too, a huge part of why I think I've been able to, I guess, wade through this the grief has been that I have also gotten to a place in my life and in my, how do I want to say this? Like how I know and understand myself. Like I really know who I am now, and being able to be that raw with yourself is so important. A lot of people will push it aside, and then that's how you develop all these autoimmune diseases, or you have
Hello.
illnesses, because you're like, yeah, I don't have time to these feelings, so I'm going to put them over here for now. And you're just putting them in a closet or under the rug, and it's just getting so claustrophobic in there. You have to let it out. Days after my dad passed, I remember I was in my childhood home alone. I think my mom had gone on an errand. I put on some music and just kind of thrashed around. I needed to physically like get it out of my body. And I'm someone who needs a lot of somatic release. I learned that very early on when I first started going to therapy. And we start to hold everything in, and even creative expression, that has so been a huge part of my grief process too. And but just getting it out, getting a scream out. And when you don't express those hard feelings, they really can start to make you sick. And if they're not making you sick, they're making you, I don't know, that energy.
It bottles up, and then it comes out in the ways we really don't want it to, at times that are the least convenient.
Creative expression is huge for me. Somatic release, like truly sweating it out, crying it out. I'm never one to deny myself a good cry.
And I think for a lot of people, there's this fear that if they start to let it out, it's not going to stop.
Right.
There's that fear. And you shared earlier that you're supported by a mental health therapist, or you were. And so knowing that sometimes we need the support of a professional so that we're not so afraid of, how do I stop it? Because once I start, will I be able to stop? And what will it look like? Will it be too much? And especially for people of color, for folks who are queer, not everyone has the same spaces and allowances as others. And so, but I do want us to get into the other side of grief, which is how we are able to experience, even if it's a glimmer of joy, of playfulness, of humor. Sometimes we might feel a little bit guilty when that comes up. But I'm wondering for you, what are ways that you've allowed laughter, joy, playfulness to be a creative tool that you have used for yourself or for others when navigating grief?
After my dad passed, I think it took me maybe a month to get to a comedy show again. And at that point, I had written up a whole joke about my dead dad. So writing about it. But again, I have to say, like, he is the person who I got my humor from. So diving back into comedy was, to me, a way to honor him too. There were moments too where that got really tough with my mom's grief or my grief. And I remember a particular moment where my mom didn't want to go somewhere because her date to the thing would have been my dad, but I had gone to town to be her person. And then I was getting, I was getting a little upset because we were maybe 30 minutes from this thing starting, and she said she didn't want to go. And I said, I did not get on a flight for you to do this. I cracked a joke, and I won't say what it is because it's kind of like, I joke about my dad and why I was a better date anyway. And she burst out laughing. And I think sometimes too, it's like, it really is, take this with a grain of salt, but I do think like we do create our own reality, and that's something that I actively have to step into sometimes. I can, especially if I'm around my sister and my mom, I'll revert back to like teenage Lilli, if I'm triggered. But in these moments where I can use my humor to just shift the vibe completely, and for myself or for others, like sometimes we do just need to snap out of it. My grief process with my dad, there's never been a moment where I haven't used humor and felt really good about that. Like, this is exactly what he would want, is for me to just like laugh about it and move things on along a little. Yeah, he was definitely the life of the party, the light in the room, the one smiling, cracking jokes, telling stories. And so any opportunity I have to do the thing I love, which is tell jokes and tell stories, I feel like I'm honoring him. And it's something he was excited about for me. He really loved that I did comedy and do comedy. So humor is very much tied to my grieving process. And then there's that thing too, comedy is just tragedy plus time. It's just like very much part of how I approach my comedy. Never like, hey, I'm just going to tell some puns and stuff. I'm actually oftentimes bringing pretty heavy subject matter to the stage and spinning it in a funny way. And I know that people are going to think about it later. And I only know this because people have told me a few times that they thought about my joke later, or as I'm telling the joke, they're laughing at it like it's hitting them a little later. Laugh, but by then I'm on to the next joke. And in that regard, I'm just kind of like, here's an uncomfortable thing, but we can all acknowledge that this is real.
Yes.
I'm talking about, the trials and tribulations of that, as being a woman of color, being a woman who's dating in Texas, stuff that is otherwise not dinner table talk. I'm somehow finding a way to laugh at that. And that is always going to be the biggest tool in my toolkit.
Some of the best stuff, I mean, it really is. It's kind of heavy, but, we can only be with the heavy for so long. And so to kind of make light of it allows us to continue to exist, to continue to thrive, to fight back. And so, I mean, some of this stuff, you just honestly, you have to use a little bit of real life, because otherwise, I mean, some of the best, most funniest stories are about, I hate to say it, but some of the horrors of dating, or about our politicians. But you're right. There is a timing piece about it, because sometimes it's like, ooh, that's a little too soon for that joke. And everyone's timing is a little bit different. Some people can get to that side of things a little bit quicker than others. Well, then I got to ask about this. Okay, so sometimes when a person is navigating grief, there's a tendency to seek comfort from an ex or in a hookup, or, because it's like, let me just do something totally different. Let me be around someone who doesn't even really know the depth of what I'm going through. Let me just be out here. And life is short, so let me just be out here having a good time. So I'm wondering, was this anything that you felt yourself kind of gravitating towards as a way to kind of be carefree, or to have something else that's on the mind that's totally different than what you're navigating?
Great question. I am not someone who has ever looked to a hookup or another person like in a sexual relationship. I didn't start like seeking external validation from other people. I will say I gained weight for sure. I was like trying to fill a void when my dad passed. I was like, oh dang, I'm like eating a lot. I'm like really.
Well, there's a desire for comfort, and it can come in different forms. Yeah. Okay. So for you, it came in food.
Food. and I think cannabis can be medicinal, but I definitely was smoking a lot of cannabis. And I don't know, I think it's really those things. It was really just like I needed to be alone a little bit. I
Ah,
felt alone, but I didn't want to seek and recruit company and then feel even more alone. And I knew at that point how to show up for myself.
that
I
makes
think
sense.
that is a huge part of it. And that's why I said earlier, that goes back to where I said you have to really, yes, it's great to have people who you can be raw with, but you have to be able to look in the mirror, sit in a room alone, no TV on, nothing stimulating you. Like if you can sit alone in your room with yourself and show up for yourself with compassion and understanding. I knew I was gaining weight. I knew I was eating a lot, and I knew it was okay because my dad had died. I
Yep.
knew I was smoking to feel better, but I'm not someone at this point who sees that as a bad thing. I think, this is what has worked for me and what is safe for me, as opposed to maybe having a prescription for an SSRI, because I was prescribed an SSRI and I just can't bring
Mm-hmm.
myself to commit to taking them. And that's a
Okay.
whole other conversation. It was an anti-anxiety med at the time, because when
Mm-hmm.
I passed, and I know this is common, and especially in women, I was feeling symptoms of his heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
In my body, these sensations that of his passing. And whether someone wants to think that's crazy or not real or not, like that was my reality. And it was actually, I was validated with my primary care physician, who said, yeah, that's actually pretty common in women. You're not having a
Mm-hmm.
heart attack, you're not experiencing that same thing. But I now that I'm thinking of it, she was being very compassionate with me, because she knew what was happening, and it was grief, but it was also very real in my body. So to
Mhm.
calm my anxiety, we did a stress test and an echo test. My heart was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just broken. It was just sad. It was just grieving.
Which there are terms for these things. So yeah, there are these physical manifestations of grief, and so they can involve respiratory and cardiovascular things such as the tightness or aching in the chest, the shortness of breath, heart palpitations. It can be different pains or tensions that a person is feeling in their body. It could be digestive. And so there are different ways to navigate that. Then there's also the dying from a broken heart. And so, but yeah, so yeah, these are not things that were in your mind. And so I love that your doctor listened to you, ruled out any physical things, and then also offered you some options in terms of the SSRI and with sounds like some anti-anxiety support. Yep. So different people, need different types of support. And so you were leaning into what felt supportive to you, which was around the cannabis and around the comfort food. And for everyone, their bodies react differently to different things. So you were listening to and honoring what was supportive for you, but you also were seeking professional advice.
Yes. And I think to that point too, my doctor, my primary care physician, is a woman of color, and that is huge for me. And my therapist is a Latina woman. And that was huge for me too when I first started therapy. I was like, I want and need to feel seen and understood by the people I'm speaking with. And as far as like choosing a therapist went, I was like, I know a lot of what I go through and the stuff I need to get past is around identity. It was very important to me that I found a therapist who could speak to that identity with some understanding. And then with my doctor, yeah, I need a woman who's going to listen to me and not just think, oh, she's just being crazy, or here's a prescription and, this or that. She really sat with me and listened to me. And at that point, I wasn't, at this point in my life and adulthood, I don't have shame around telling you exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I might hold something back here or there, but I just need to feel very comfortable with the professionals around me to be able to advocate for myself to the best of my ability, to be able to trust as well that the care I'm receiving is
adequate and not going to harm you.
You all know more than me, like we all have to navigate and connect with people who we're going to feel are really seeing us and hearing us.
Ooh, you know what? I think that question, it touched on some things, I was just curious around the desire for physical comfort and not even necessarily sexual. I know that I have an ex who lost both of their parents, and both times was a way that they were able to get back together with me because I felt for them because they were grieving. And so sometimes we might look for not even sexual comfort, but a comfort of something physical, but that was not the case for you at all. Now, what I'm also wondering about is what grief has taught you about love in general, because you spoke a little bit to the fact that there's a level of grief that you now know more than you knew before experiencing the loss of your dad, and that there's almost a level of losing someone close to us that puts life in perspective in a different type of way, in the sense that we want to live fully because we know life is not forever. And we also want to live in a way that honors that person. And so sometimes there's certain things that they knew we were passionate about or that they really wanted us to be happy. And we think about them and the sacrifices that they've made, and it makes us kind of live a little bit differently. And so I'm wondering if grief has taught you anything about love in particular.
It has taught me.
And you get to take your time. Yeah, you get to take your time. No rush.
I feel like the first thing that I want to say is like, grief has taught me everything about love. I think because true love is like letting it go, or that, no, I mean, that's a true test of love. I think not the end all be all letting it go, but it's a true test of letting love just be. Like a lot of what I've learned and had prepared myself for, I guess, in that moment, or what life had prepared me, how life prepared me to get to this moment where I lost my dad. And then again with my dog, it has taught me that it doesn't leave with the loss. I've said this to many people since losing my dad, I feel like our connection is stronger because we're not holding human guilt or shame. I'm not shy. Like there are conversations, and you kind of I wanted to touch on this earlier. You said something and it made me think, well, sometimes I am mad at my dad. There are conversations I didn't get to have with him, but I think had I even brought up while he was alive with me in a room to confront about this or that, like there are things that I think he couldn't have handled. There are truths that he couldn't have maybe had the words for, or maybe it would have hurt our connection before it could have healed. But it's taught me so much about how human he was, and it helps me to see him for who he was and still love him with my whole heart.
Oh, I know that's right.
And with my dog, because that was my first experience with unconditional love, the loss of something that had never disappointed me, had only been there for me. This dog came into my life when I needed him the most, for one.
What was his name?
Miles.
Oh, Miles. Mm-hmm.
Best Smile, and he was so fluffy and just like an angel, like so calm. Everyone just loved Miles. He was so chill. Losing him was also pretty unexpected. I found out he had heart failure and kidney failure like 2 days after Christmas. And then
Oh.
he passed not even a whole month later. Miles will always make me cry because he just cracked me open in a way that I needed. I think I had held on to, I had walls up, and I still do, like, but this is the realization of being human and like life is short. My only mission to myself, I think, is to evolve as much as I can in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Learn as much as I can to redirect, reroute as needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have that awareness, but I think too, like, I think Erica Badu said this once, or she's said this about her daughter, that she is an updated version of her. So
Mm.
she said it way better and much more eloquently, but basically, like, you're this software, and then you have kids, and you know they should be running on smoother software. We have had, like, we've tested and gotten all the bugs out. We're fixing things. We're healing ourselves. So now the next generation is healed from those things, and they can maybe heal further. There's just so much living inside us that we don't understand, we operate from. There's so much unhealed, there are so many unhealed wounds from our parents and their parents and theirs
Mm-hmm.
that we don't acknowledge. So I could be mad about these losses, but I am able to see that the love I experienced from these earthly beings has impacted me in such a beautiful and great way that I can move on from that and like take something positive from it.
I think that part of what you're sharing is that grief has taught you a lot more about love and a lot more about not just love, but also who you want to be in this world, what's important to you. Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Where can listeners follow you? Where can they learn about some of the creative projects that you're working on?
Yes, well, I do have a website.
Okay.
Yo soy LilliLopez.com. On social media, I am Combo Loca.
Where did that come from? I've often wondered.
I was just about to say, and then I was like, who cares? But
no, we care.
So Combo Loca is actually, it's funny how it came to me because it makes so much sense, but it is from the grocery store HEB, the world's best grocery store that you can only find in Texas. They have coupons, and the coupon deals are called Combo Locals. If you buy this one thing, you get this other thing for free or something. So I don't know, my love for HEB knows no bounds, but I took Combo Local and just made it Loca. And it actually makes a ton of sense for me because I do a lot of things, a lot of random things. And I'll promote a comedy show tomorrow or today, and I'll promote like a bingo night tomorrow. So you can join me for these side quests a lot of the time. So
I'm saying your side quests are amazing. Amazing.
So some of the best side quests I've been on have been with Kathleen.
I always say the same, girl.
Yes,
you are the
yes,
queen of side quests.
We just walk into some side quests and then
Can I also offer a reframe on this? So to me, what I think you do beautifully, Lilli, and I don't want to minimize it by it's like, oh, you're just wandering around. Really, to me, I think you're really incredibly good at being in the moment. And whoever is the person in front of you is the most important person in the room. And so the way that you listen to them, the way that you're like, you're open to the experience of them, you're open to the wisdom that they have, you're very in the moment. I mean, you're exactly where your feet are in a way that's really powerful and magical. And a lot of people are learning how to do that, and it will take them decades. and still not be there, but you're able to do it in such a way that I think that is part of the magic. So to me, it's not just a side quest. It's you really operating in the moment. And if in the moment you're like, let's see what's down this path, or something is telling me, let's go down this way, you're open to it. I mean, you can always get back to where you were at if you decide you want to go that way.
Thank you. I feel very seen, but I also, I mean, I don't want to put an addendum to a beautiful compliment you just gave.
Put in an addendum. It's you. You get to tell us.
I love that. And I want to be her all the time. And this is where I start to get a little hard on myself for, maybe not showing up in smiles and rainbows and sunshine all the time. And then, it's just like causes that interesting friction, right? Where I'm like, do I have to be I actually saw a meme the other day. It was like fake affirmations. And one of them was, I'm not in charge of the vibe. I'm not in charge. And so I've unlearned a lot of like those people pleasing tendencies. So the addendum here, I think, is if you are present and open with me, my body feels that. If you are coming into the space that we are sharing with closed energy, I will almost always match it without recognizing first the shift isn't mine. I don't know if you're like that. Like as empaths, I think that's a common thing, but recognizing, I don't have to, if you can recognize what energy is yours and isn't, then that's great.
Yes.
That's been that's something I didn't know I was doing, until I went to therapy, and it was kind of pointed out to me like very explicitly. And then, for the last 10 years, that's something I have awareness around, but you still have to like put it into practice. So every day is a practice for me. I show up to the practice like with my whole heart in it every single day. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I appreciate you seeing me for being an open person, because that is how I've been able to experience some of the most beautiful moments of my life, and how I've been able to walk into rooms and like magic happens.
Well, and also not everybody gets access to our personalities.
Yeah.
And
no, for sure. They can't. Yeah, so they can't.
It has to be in a space where you feel comfortable. You don't feel this pressure to perform or be a certain type of person. You can just be you. And sometimes different personalities just vibe well together, and the magic can happen with that.
Exactly. It's always that. I feel, not to get way off track and into a whole other thing while we're closing out, I have a lot of Pisces placements, and if that means you or like water placements, I definitely feel like I can go deep pretty quick with people. If I just meet you and we go deep, we go deep. If we don't, we don't. But I am going to ride whatever wave that we're on. I'm pretty good at riding a wave.
Well, and I think creating the waves, you're not just waiting for whatever is about to happen. I don't think you're a person that waits. You go out and you make something happen.
Thank you for joining us, Lilli. This has been such a delight.
It is. And it is such a heavy conversation. And I appreciate you being so open. And also, there's a level of labor in what you did today. And so I appreciate you deciding to do that for the good of the group and for listeners, because you spoke a lot of things that are really hard to put into words. And as you were speaking, I think this was a perfect example of, I think because of the relationship you have with Kathleen, there was so much we heard. In even the ways that you shared the things that you shared, there was such a vulnerability there and such an honesty, which is really hard to do around anything, but certainly around grief. And I also really appreciate the ways that you shared with us a little bit more about your dad. I feel honored to have an opportunity to hear you talk about you and then also your relationships.
I'm so grateful you guys had me guest, and this is a conversation that I'm definitely willing to have. But it's great to be in conversation with you too. I'm very comfortable speaking with you all. I don't feel silly for saying anything. Usually, I'm like a little cringe after I go go so vulnerable, but y'all are the best. And it must be said, it needs to be said. My dad loved Kathleen.
Oh, I loved your dad.
You meant so much to him for a lot of the reasons Jessica spoke on earlier, that we were like we had each other's back. And he always pointed out, Kathleen, the day that I left, where you were, I was crying in the back of his truck and you were crying going to your car. And he had brought that, he was a storyteller, and I would let him tell the stories as many times as he wanted because he was just that good. But he brought it up a few times over the last, over that decade, that moment that it just like his heart, he wanted to cry too. And we were moving away from each other. But yeah, he loved my whole family loves Kathleen, and I love
I love your whole family. I
love
do.
you so much, and I love you both.
That story of the walking away from each other, yes, I remember Kathleen telling us about that, all the feels.
All the feels.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the Emboldened with Jessica community. Know someone who'd love this episode? Share it with them. It's one of the best ways to help us grow. If you haven't already, take a moment to rate and review Emboldened with Jessica on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others discover the show and feel at home here. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? We'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or YouTube at Emboldened with Jessica. Until next time.